Haarlem, Netherlands, 1943. A teenage girl pedals down a cobblestone street, braids bouncing, dimpled smile. She looks 12, maybe 13. The SS officer doesn't even glance her way. She's just another Dutch girl. Harmless, insignificant. That's the last mistake he'll ever make. The bike glides past, one hand on the handlebars, the other reaches beneath her coat. Crack. The officer drops. No one screams. Not yet. The girl is already 2 blocks away, braids still bouncing. That same dimpled smile fixed on her face like a painted doll. But here's the thing that turns your blood cold. She wasn't alone. 10 meters back, another bicycle, another girl, slightly older, darker hair, same innocent face, the lookout, the spotter, the second trigger if the first one failed. 2 teenage sisters, 14 and 16 years old. And between them, they've just sent another Nazi to hell. This is Freddie and Truus Oversteegen. And this story, it's about to get a whole lot darker. The 14-year-old girl's innocent bike decimated dozens of Nazis. Before there were bullets and blood, there was a barge. Schoten, Netherlands, 1920s. Truus Oversteegen was born on August the 29th, 1923. Freddie Oversteegen was born on September the 6th, 1925. They were 2 sisters living with their parents on a ship that creaked and swayed on the Dutch canals. Their father was jobless and he had no money. All he could do was to sing French songs. He never paid for the barge. Their mother, Treintje van der Molen, finally had enough. She divorced him and decided to raise the girls alone. Treintje moved her daughters into a tiny apartment in Haarlem. They had nothing but straw mattresses to sleep on. But here's what poverty teaches you when you have the right mother. It teaches you to share what little you have. Even when sharing means sleeping in the same bed and giving strangers your mattress, even when it costs you everything. Treintje was a communist. She was not like the Soviet propaganda kind. She was the kind who believed every human being deserved food, safety, and dignity. So when Jewish refugees from Lithuania knocked on her door in the 1930s, she did not hesitate to offer them shelter. "Sleep here," she told them. "We will make room." Freddie and Truus had to sleep in the same bed that night because their beds were occupied by people fleeing persecution. The girls did not complain. They had been taught something most children never learn. When someone needs help, you help the person without hesitation. They made dolls for Spanish Civil War orphans. They stuffed their straw mattresses tighter so others could have a place to rest. But everything they had been taught was about to be tested when the Nazis invaded the Netherlands on May 10, 1940. In ways no child should ever have to face, the resistance does not knock politely. It tests you first. By the year 1941, Freddie is 14, while Truus was 16. For months, they had been distributing anti-Nazi pamphlets. They sneaked through neighborhoods with illegal newspapers tucked in their bicycle baskets, slapping warnings over German posters. It was dangerous work, the kind that can get even a grown adult shot. They were fighting in the shadows, thinking no one would see them. But Frans van der Wiel noticed. A man who was tall and slim, with a fedora and a long wool coat. He had the looks of a movie star and commanded the Haarlem Council of Resistance. He knocked on their door, but not to recruit them yet, but to test them. A few days later, he returned dressed as a Gestapo officer. He drew a fake gun and screamed in German about a Jewish man hiding nearby. Freddie and Truus didn't break. They kicked. They hit. They showed defiance. Frans dropped the act and smiled. You passed. Their mother, Treintje, gives her blessing with one rule, one commandment that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. Always stay human. Don't lose your soul. It is a rule they will have to follow for the rest of their lives, even when following it becomes impossible. The potato shed smells like earth and secrets. 7 people were inside, 5 men and 2 girls. The youngest barely looks old enough for high school. Franz teaches them how to shoot. He teaches them how to march quietly through the woods and to sabotage without leaving traces. They learn to rig bridges with dynamite, to disable the rail line between IJmuiden and Haarlem, and to move through occupied territory like ghosts. Freddie wears her hair in braids. She looked 12 on a good day and 10 on others, so no one ever suspected her. Truus was taller, a tomboy who sat with her knees apart and took up space like she owned the world. They are supposed to be girls, just girls. They are supposed to be worrying about school dances and first kisses and what to wear on Saturday. Instead, they are learning the exact angle to hold a pistol so the recoil doesn't break their wrists. They are memorizing the sound a body makes when it hits the ground. They are being taught that sometimes murder is the only moral choice left. And through it all, their mother's rule echoes in their minds. Always stay human. Don't lose your soul. They promised. But the war has other plans. A German warehouse burns beautifully. Orange flames licking the night sky. Black smoke billowing like a demon's breath. Freddie and Truus pedaled away with their faces lit by the inferno behind them. No one stopped them. No one even looked. 2 teenage girls on bicycles. Harmless. When they reached the safe house, they collapsed. The resistance gave them the task of destroying German supplies as their first assignment. They have just saved the lives of their allies, dealing a great blow to the Germans. But they have also crossed a line. And there's no going back. For their second assignment, the method is simple and tricky. Truus would enter a tavern where German officers drank and laughed and celebrated another day of occupation. She walks in. She wore red lipstick and a bright smile. Her eyes were flirtatious. She approached an SS officer in his mid-30s who wore a wedding ring. It did not matter. "Want to go for a walk?" she asked in perfect German. "The woods are beautiful this time of night." He grinned, thinking he knew what this was. He was wrong. Freddie waited across the street in her lookout position, her heart hammering against her ribs. They left together. 10 minutes passed. 15. Deep in the forest, Truus led him to a clearing where moonlight filtered through the branches. It felt romantic and private. It was perfect. "Here?" he asked. "Here," she confirmed. Franz van der Wiel stepped from behind a tree. One shot. The officer crumples. Blood sprays. He drops. Truus didn't look back. She couldn't. If she looked back, she would break. If she looked back, she would see the wedding ring and wonder about children who might never know what happened to their father. If she looked back, she stops being human. So she doesn't look back. She meets Freddie at the rendezvous point. Freddie had wet herself from fear. She had frozen at her post, paralyzed by the sound of that gunshot echoing through the trees. They held each other and cried. "It was necessary," Truus whispered. They repeated this lie until they almost believed it. But the rule still echoes. Always stay human. They were trying, but the war keeps demanding more. In 1943, a young woman named Hannie Schaft. To her friends, she was called Hannie. She was 22 years old, a former law student who had wanted to become a human rights lawyer. The Nazis kicked her out of university for refusing to sign a loyalty oath to Germany. 3/4 of her classmates signed. But she didn't. Now she's here standing before the Oversteegen sisters. Freddie's jealous at first. She and Truus had been the only young women in the resistance. Now they had competition. But jealousy dies fast when you are fighting for your life. The three of them became sisters not by blood, but by something deeper. Hannie was the intellectual, the planner. Truus was the leader, decisive and fearless. Freddie was the mapper, the one who visualized every detail before they moved. Together, they were unstoppable. They smuggled Jewish children out of concentration camps with false identification papers tucked into their bicycle baskets. They hid weapons beneath their coats. They pedaled through hell while Allied bombs flew overhead. Like it's just another Tuesday, they shoot from bicycles. Truus driving, Freddie firing from the back, a two-woman death squad that the Nazis could not fathom. Because they could not believe women were capable of this. They executed Dutch collaborators, the traitors who sold out Jewish families, the NSB members who wore swastikas and betrayed their neighbors. In January of 1945, an NSB officer named Willem Zirkzee walks home after a long day of hunting Jews. He didn't make it. Hannie and Truus are waiting. 2 shots. Zirkzee falls near the Kreligerhuis on the Leidsevaart. Another collaborator was erased. Another betrayer removed. The Nazis knew someone was hunting them. They call her the girl with the red hair. They didn't know her name, nor did they know where she lived. But Hitler himself ordered her capture. The net was closing. Not all missions were accepted. In 1944, a resistance leader approached the girls with a new assignment: kidnap the children of Arthur Sees Inquart, a senior Nazi officer, and use them as leverage to free imprisoned Dutch resistance fighters. The plan was tactically sound and was strategically brilliant, but morally unthinkable. No, Freddie said. Absolutely not, Truus agreed. Hannie shook her head. We are not Hitlerites. Resistance fighters do not murder children. This is the line. This is where they drew it. They will kill soldiers. They will execute collaborators. They will burn warehouses and sabotage railways and send officers into the woods to die. But children? Never, because Tranche's rule still echoes in their heads. Always stay human. Always. After every kill, they felt the same impulse. I want to help them get up. Years later, Freddie says in a hollow voice, you shoot someone. They fall, but you want to pick them up. The humanity never leaves them. It just gets buried deeper. Truus puts it differently. It was tragic and very difficult, and we cried about it afterwards. We did not feel it suited us. It never suits anybody unless they are real criminals. One loses everything. It poisons the beautiful things in life. They are not soldiers by training. They are not killers by nature. They are girls trying to save their country by destroying pieces of their own souls. But the war is not done taking pieces. On March 21, 1945, Hannie Schaft was stopped at a military checkpoint in Haarlem. Routine check. Papers, please. She's carrying De Waarheid, The Truth, an illegal communist newspaper. She was also carrying a pistol, and beneath her dyed black hair, her red roots are showing. The Nazi's eyes widen. Das Mädchen mit den roten Haaren, the girl with the red hair. They torture her for weeks. Interrogations, beatings, solitary confinement. To force her confession, they arrest her parents and sent them to the Herzogenbusch concentration camp. Hannie loses it, not due to her personal suffering, because of theirs. Truus and Freddie stayed with her day and night, afraid she would surrender herself in exchange for her parents' freedom. Slowly, she recovered. Her parents were released after 9 months. Hannie returned to the fight. She dyed her hair black again, put on glasses. She becomes the ghost the Nazis can't catch. Until they did, and this time, There was no escape. When Freddie heard that Hannie had been arrested, she didn't hesitate. She disguises herself as a German nurse with a white uniform and a Red Cross armband. Real tears were streaming down her face because the terror is real. "I need to take the prisoner for medical examination," she sobs to the guards at the Wetteringshands prison. The guards looked at this crying nurse, this emotional wreck. They almost believed her. But Hannie wasn't there. She has already been moved to the Amstelveense, and by the time Freddie learned this, Hannie was already dead. The dunes of Overveen were sandy, silent, and beautiful. Hannie Schaft is 24 years old. The war is almost over. Germany is losing, and liberation is 18 days away. But the Nazis don't care. 2 Dutch Nazi officers march her into the dunes. Martin Kuiper, remember that name. Matthias Schmitz, remember that one too. Schmitz fires first. The bullet grazes her scalp. Blood streams down her face. She stumbles but doesn't fall. Pain explodes behind her eyes. And in that moment, wounded, bleeding, seconds from death, Hannie Schaft looks at her executioners and says, "Ich schiet beter." I shoot better. Kuiper raises his submachine gun. Shots, a burst of fire. Hannie collapses, 1 bullet in the head. Instant death. They buried her in a shallow grave between the dunes. There was no marker and a name. Just another body, the girl with the red hair, the law student who wanted to save the world. The third sister was gone, 18 days before liberation. On May 5, 1945, the Netherlands was liberated. Freddie and Truus searched for Hannie among the freed prisoners. They don't find her, but they keep searching. They don't find her. It took weeks before they learned the truth that Hannie has been dead since April. When her body was finally exhumed, she was surrounded by 421 other resistance fighters. 421 men and 1 woman. Freddie coped by getting married and having babies. She raised 3 children and lived a quiet life. But every year on the Dutch Remembrance Day, she wakes up feeling a bit of dread. The memories never leave. Truus became a sculptor. She created memorials to Hannie. She gave lectures at universities about war, anti-Semitism, and tolerance. She also writes a memoir titled Not Then, Not Now, Not Ever. But the nightmares do not stop. They both suffer from what would later be diagnosed as PTSD. They screamed in their sleep, fighting invisible enemies. They relived every shot, every kill, every moment they chose violence to save lives. The instinct never leaves. I wanted to help them get up. For 70 years, the world didn't know their names. For 70 years, they are just 2 old women in Haarlem. For 70 years, the story of 3 young women who fought a different kind of war remains buried. Then, slowly, the silence breaks. In 1996, Truus established the National Hannie Schaft Foundation. She kept her friend's memory alive and taught the next generation. In 2014, when Freddie was 88 and Truus was 90, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte awarded them the Mobilization War Cross. Finally, they got recognition for their valor and sacrifice, for the pieces of their souls they left scattered in the woods and streets of occupied Netherlands. The streets in Haarlem are named after all 3 of them. Schools taught their story. Books are written about them. The 3 Musketeers, the all-female unit, the resistance fighters who seduced Nazis and sabotaged railways and shot collaborators from bicycles, the ones who refused to become monsters while fighting monsters, the ones who stayed human even when humanity seemed impossible. Truus Oversteegen died on June 18, 2016. She was 92 years old. Freddie Oversteegen died on September 5, 2018. She was 1 day shy of her 93rd birthday. Hannie Schaft's legacy lives forever. People ask, how many did you kill? Freddie always responded the same way. One should not ask a soldier any of that. The exact number remains unknown. But here's what we do know. They saved countless lives. And in doing all this, they lost something irreplaceable. Their mother's rule haunted them until the end. Always stay human. Don't lose your soul. Did they follow it? They tried. They refused to kill children. They cried after every assassination. They wanted to help their victims get up. But here is the terrible truth about war. Sometimes staying human means doing inhuman things. Sometimes saving souls requires damaging your own. Sometimes the only way to fight monsters is to become something monstrous yourself. And then you spend the rest of your life clawing your way back to the light. Freddie, Truus, and Hannie did that. They fought, killed, and suffered. But they stayed human anyway, not without cost. But they stayed human, and that impossible balance between violence and virtue, between murder and morality, between what they did and who they remained. This is their legacy. 3 teenage girls, bicycles and braids and dimpled smiles. And beneath it all, pistols, dynamite, unshakable conviction. They were meant to grow up, fall in love, and live ordinary lives. Instead, they became soldiers in a war that stole their innocence but never broke their humanity. This is what resistance looks like. This is the price of staying human in hell. We are not Hitlerites. Resistance fighters don't murder children. Freddie Oversteegen.